So Florida is live right now. Thank you for joining the program. We're a big fan of your X feed. We encourage everybody to follow. Let's just pop it up real fast here. We encourage everybody to follow because this is the TikTok of a feed that really shows you hard data, hard numbers, interprets them, and is able to make it, is able to take the data and make it into vision cast, like what it means. So I want to start with the state of Florida, since you work for Florida's Voice. What does the state of Florida enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans show you, Eric?
Well, right now, Florida is just having a total red tsunami, and I'm not using that term lightly. I am not making that up. It is redder than 2020's election day, and you remember that was the year where we had the big discrepancy where Republicans wanted to not vote early and Democrats only wanted to vote early. This year, we've been hearing, oh, well, Republicans are voting early more, but Democrats are just going to come out on election day. Florida, you can see the lead is almost 1.1 million for Republicans. And by the way, let's just take a minute to realize that is now larger or similar to their overall statewide registration lead. And we're not even at 100% turnout. And so if you know anything about that, that means that the GOP is overperforming more than anyone, including myself. I'm very bullish on Florida Republicans. They are really showing up today. The election day margin is like R plus 20, something insane like that today. Not expected on my part, but in my opinion, I think this is going to keep going. I think President Trump is not only going to win this state, I think he can win it by over 10.
So if the Republican enthusiasm is in the plus 20%, that's a leading indicator, because we get these numbers from Florida so accurately. That's a leading indicator for what's happening across the country. You're seeing some positive signs out of the Northern Mariana Islands and Guam, Dixville Notch. Everything seems to be shifting rightward at a pretty significant clip. And Florida is kind of a canary in the coal mine there. How transferable is this to the national political arena?
Yeah, well, first you have to go look at Arizona, because Arizona is a state that Trump very, very narrowly lost in 2020, thanks to Maricopa County. And we're looking at Maricopa today. We're looking at Arizona, and the 10 a.m. Local update, Republicans are leading by double. What you have up now is not really changed. That rate is the same, and that's a couple hours old now.
Oh yeah.
So
okay.
Republicans are keeping up pace. That number has doubled on both sides, and Republicans are not slowing down in Arizona. And so you say, okay, let's look at Florida, let's look at Arizona, and let's look at the nation. You mentioned everything shifting right. New Hampshire, we had that small town vote at midnight go tie 50-50 for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That was a town that Biden won every vote in that town of 6. And the last time Trump got a vote in that town was 2016. You go look at where Republicans are situated in these rural areas. We're seeing a flood. This is anecdotal, but it's also a lot of anecdotal. It's building up. We're seeing these massive lines in churches. We're seeing Bucks County. There were lines before polls even opened. Bucks County recently flipped Republican. Scott Presler's been basically living there for the past year. And it's just, you want to say it's shocking, but it's really not, because we kind of saw this coming. Even CNN was reporting the other week, if Trump easily wins, all of the indicators were there. So I think that right now what we're seeing is Republicans, they voted early, but a lot of them are still waiting to vote. So looking at Florida, looking at Arizona, you mentioned this is a lagging indicator. I do think this is a sign that all of this data we're seeing, we don't have the same real-time data in a state like Pennsylvania. We're going to have to wait on that. We're going to have to wait on Wisconsin, but this is promising.
So in North Carolina and Georgia, we haven't talked about those yet. Can you zoom in there? And the indicators that we've got is that Republicans might have won the early vote in North Carolina, that Georgia is planning on having an early call tonight. And talk us through what's the updates from those states.
Yeah, so there was a model posted in the early vote last night, and I don't remember the margin, but Trump narrowly won the early vote under that model, where Biden won the early vote, obviously, in 2020 in North Carolina. And just for perspective, again, if Trump wins the early vote at all, I mean, it's over. He's not losing the election day vote. I will very confidently state that. And I think Democrats know that too. So North Carolina, if he did win that early vote, I know you mentioned earlier that you're probably looking for an early call in those two states we talked about, North Carolina and Georgia. Um, in this situation, he could easily surpass his 2020 margin in North Carolina. Now, going over to Georgia, that is a state that Trump obviously would be flipping back from 2020. In the early vote, we've seen black turnout, minority turnout down. The gap between white turnout and black turnout is significant, and the rural turnout is high. And again, this has been the story of the entire election. Rural turnout is up. It's not just Georgia; it's Wisconsin too. It's Florida too, and this is everywhere. So, in terms of Georgia, yes, the elections officials said that he's hoping for a lot of the vote in by 8 p.m. And Georgia, North Carolina, really going to set the tone for tonight. Obviously, we're gonna hope and wait and see if Trump can run up the margins there. I believe that if he's able to extend his 2020 margin in North Carolina, maybe get to his 2016 Georgia plus 3, 4, 5, bodes well for him in Pennsylvania, and that's the game.
So in Pennsylvania with these long lines, can you talk us through what they mean? We've also seen some scant lines inside of urban centers that tracks with the Trump data that was released yesterday saying that urban voters are just not showing up, and not just showing up by small percentages, in the millions comparatively between now and the 2020 election. Democrats have eroded or atomized millions of urban votes, and that's tending to play out. Meanwhile, rural votes are surging for Trump, and we've put up the lines. You can see them all across the country. These lines, I mean, this image alone is insane. Here's one that you posted. What is this an indicator of?
Yeah, well, when you see blue collar workers, you see working class, you see white people coming to the polls, and obviously, if you're trading a black vote for a white vote, Trump has made a lot of gains with minorities. We know he's trying to hold on to his white margins from 2016, 2020. But the bottom line is there is this Democratic hope that, oh, well, turnout might be down in the urban areas, but all these men are voting for Kamala Harris, and obviously she's going to do better with women. When you see a lot of these white men in line, that is a heavily Trump demographic. We're on election day, and you mentioned some of the scant images we've seen out of places like Philadelphia. And hey, there are some lines. It's election day, but I this is anecdotal, but I didn't see many minorities in those lines, and that's reflective in the early voting data out of Pennsylvania, where white working class Philly and Pittsburgh Republicans are up, and in black Philly and black Pittsburgh, Democrats are down from 2020. So I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is really aligning with what we saw in Pennsylvania mail-in voting data. And again, you look at these lines, you see blue-collar workers, they're showing up, they're definitely voting for Trump in large numbers. And we don't have that much intel out of Pennsylvania yet, but it's a promising sign if you're the Trump campaign.
What you're looking at here is a line in Virginia. Now, this is something that other pollsters have come on our program and have said, guys, Virginia might be in play. It's like a 50-50 at this point. And you're looking at a line in Virginia from a rural area waiting to vote, and that's the reports that we've been getting. Do you see any indication that Virginia might actually flip for Trump, or something like a New Hampshire or a New Mexico or even a Minnesota?
Yeah, I think if Trump has a good night, he has a chance at one of those. I think it's a little bit too difficult to tell which one it could be. It could be all of them get close. Maybe one of them tips over. We've had some. You remember 2016, New Hampshire was razor thin. The state has trended, to the left since 2016. So no one knows which one it might be. But I've seen indications that at the very least, and again, winning a state like Virginia, winning a state like New Hampshire, at that point, Trump has already won the election. He's already won Pennsylvania. It would be a nice bonus to have. It would give him a mandate. It would definitely be fun to watch. But I do think that his odds of winning these states, based on preliminary reports we're getting, is probably higher than some might think. So Virginia, I don't think a flip is out of the question. Kamala Harris, probably the favorite there. But again, these rural surges, I don't think they're isolated.
No, I mean, we're seeing them around the country. Here's Charlie Kirk posting massive lines in rural Pennsylvania, majority men. It's happening. What do you see in the polling that suggests that there is just my intuition, millions of people that can't be reached by pollsters that are going to show up and crawl over broken flaming glass to vote for Donald Trump.
The New York Times said in their final polls, they said our final polls, and they had Kamala Harris leading in the likely voter, Trump leading in the registered voter. I think that's a way to cop out. Regardless of that, they said white Republicans just aren't answering our polls. And they said the same thing happened in 2020, that there's this huge gap, like 20-point gap. And they're like, white Republicans are not answering our polls. And there are a couple theories as to why. One theory is a lot of them voted early this year and they're just kind of checked out. It could be that. It could be a variety of other reasons. Maybe they just don't answer polls on the weekend. A lot of these pollsters were polling on the weekend. It could be a million things. But the bottom line is that if you remember yesterday, Trump finished out the night. He got an endorsement from Joe Rogan. He got an endorsement from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, which is an anti-Trump group, mind you, until now, apparently. And the common denominator between those two is that is a lot of male appeal. That's a lot of young male appeal. Joe Rogan definitely with a lot of that. And, you know, people saw it. People are seeing all the support lining up behind Trump, even from figures like Joe Rogan, who aren't, you know, diehard Republicans, not even necessarily conservatives. And it's probably going to drive up a lot of this working class vote for Trump. And there's definitely, I think, a hidden Trump voter.
Maricopa County voting 2-1 right now for, and I think we have the official numbers back up, but Maricopa County vote has been shocking. This is, of course, the population center of Arizona. It's the urban center of Arizona, and it's going Republican when the early vote went Republican. Republicans winning, I think, by something like 180,000 votes in the early vote in Arizona. Now up in Maricopa, this has got to spell doom for Kamala Harris's hopes of winning Arizona.
Yeah, and the thing about Maricopa is it's not exactly a, you know, deep red rural area. I mean, that is a swing county. That is a purple county. There's a lot of moderates there. So we have to see how these voters vote, right? We have to see, and sadly, we're going to be waiting because they're on the other side of the country. So we're going to be getting a lot of other data first. But in my opinion, when you see one party flock to the polls, what happens is that is a sign of a higher independent surge in favor of that party. Because think about it. Everyone has a registered party, but if Republicans are surging to the polls, their ideology more closely aligns with right-leaning independents. And so think about what is causing those Republicans to surge, probably similar things for those right-leaning independents. And then you think about Democrats down, left-leaning independents might be down too. They follow a similar worldview, and the motivating factors driving them to or away from voting for Kamala Harris are the same. So these numbers out of Maricopa County, it's another early indicator. Kamala Harris is going to want to be doing well there, especially if she wants to win the state. She has to win the county. But if she was doing so well among moderates, if she was getting all these, you know, crossover votes, I just feel like the gap between Republicans and Democrats wouldn't be so high.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Montgomery, also known as Zero Day, and I was just checking out the tweet from Steven Crowder, and it looks like there's a wireless device being used in a voting facility, and clearly that's against the law. So they wanted to get my opinion on it, and I'm going to just give you this. So every single year, I go to this event called DEF CON, which is a hacking convention in Las Vegas. There's usually about 30,000 people there. One of those sections within this conference is called the Voting Village, and since 2017, to my knowledge, there's been vulnerabilities found in voting machines. Up until 2024, there were multiple vulnerabilities found in the current voting machines that are being used right now. The odds of them being fixed in time for the election are, you know, absolutely unbelievably low. So I don't think that is something that has happened. I would check into this for yourself, and no matter which party you're voting for, I believe we should have a fair election. And stay safe and leave any questions below. Thanks.
Love this country, love this land, but we spiral. Okay, I'm a registered Democrat. I voted straight Republican Party this time. Okay?
Okay.
The machines weren't working. I filled out the paper and I put it in the box where they told me to put it under the machine. They're going to run it later. They're taking the machine out to fix it. Okay? But I want my vote to count. I want my wife's vote to count. And
Are you afraid they're not going to count?
well, with all the stuff that went on before, the last elections where they said, oh, there's no trouble, don't worry about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, with AI and with all this new computer stuff, things can be
Manipulated quite a bit.
yeah, manipulated.